Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great and following the 3 H's of the channel. In this video, I have some really interesting, terrifying, and scary stories from Yakutia in Russia. It's located in the far east of Russia and borders the Arctic Ocean. So, if this sounds like something you're interested in, pull up a stump and let's get into it. Thank you for watching. One of the most terrible and mysterious events in my life took place not so long ago, only a couple years ago, when I went home to my village during summer vacation. Since I was a young boy, I believed that invisible forces were all around us. They were always affecting our world, and not always in a good way either. But what I had witnessed one summer evening on an empty road near the village made me change the word believed to a much more definite knew. That, and to tell the truth, gave me so many sleepless nights and an overwhelming, inexplicable fear of the native woods. Summer in Yakut village is a special time. While the city may consider summer a time for rest and fun, the village is teeming with work. Haymaking, that's what occupies the hearts and minds of the villagers, making them rise together with the first beams of the morning sun, and to spend all of their time into the late evening on the fertile glades. We in Yakutia call them alassi. The northern summer is fleeting, so it's necessary to mow down enough hay for all the farming needs, to pack it down to stacks and get them back to the village, and before you know it, you'll feel autumn's breath on the back of your head. But at the same time, haymaking is also relaxation. If you were born and grew up in a village, then it's your holy duty to spend at least a few weeks of every summer in an alas, inhaling the rich aroma of freshly cut grass. You listen to the birds singing and enjoy the crystal clear waters of the lakes and rivers the Alassi are famous for. Therefore, having passed all the bothersome exams at the university, I immediately, and without thinking, got on the bus and went home. The first week we spent mowing down hay on a river island, valiantly withstanding the attacks of mosquitoes and gnats, of which there were whole clouds in the damp air. By a certain point, you can no longer feel the bites. The skin stops swelling. Having finished all work on the island, we got over to one of the alas, located approximately 10 kilometers from our village. We went there in my stepfather's old truck, having loaded the cart trailer with all the necessary equipment, scythes, rakes, and pitchforks. Haymaking in Alas is much easier of an endeavor than on the island, and not just because there are less insects. The main difference is the ground. Alas ground is a lot more even and flat. There are far less stones and roots that could shatter your scythe. A seasoned worker haymaking would spend almost no effort working there. While I cannot say that about myself, even I could breathe easier when we left the island. Usually, we would be done by about 8 p.m. and return to the village in the same truck, but soon I developed a habit of taking my trusty bicycle with me on the cart trailer, which I had since the early years of school, and return home alone, enjoying the chill evenings and satisfaction from the hard work done. Even more so, since it was only taking me about a half an hour and made for a much more pleasant experience than that of trying to fit inside the stuffy salon of the truck in the company of my not very talkative stepfather. That evening did not become an exception. We prepared several dozen stacks of hay, which we then needed to bring together into a single big stack. When the sun began to sink toward the west, my stepfather gathered the equipment and left. It was, I reckon, around 8:30 p.m. I, on the other hand, stayed to swim in a small lake in the middle of the glade. I remained there, and I've had many a good swim in the small lake that was in the center of the glade. I was in an excellent mood, saddened only by the ooze on the bottom of the shallow lake, soiling my legs. Swimming in a river was more pleasant. The current created gave you a special feeling, and at the bottom would be covered with clean yellow sand. Having left the lake, I got dressed and got on the bicycle. By then, the sun had taken on a purple-red hue. Usually, that was interpreted as a rain warning. I was rotating the pedals, the wheels lazily scattered small stones which were plentiful on the dirt road. Both sides of the road were filled with conifers, but occasionally I could see a birch or a larch. The abundance of pines darkened the road, together with the bright red disk of the sun incessantly flashing behind the trunks. It was a wondrous sight to behold. That fateful meeting took place after about 4 kilometers. The woods parted onto the right side of the road there, opening one's view to the next to last, surrounded by a low wooden fence. There was not a soul around, but in the distance I could see the yellow shapes of haystacks. At the left side there was a thin, small river, so there wasn't too many trees down there too. Ahead of me was an abrupt turn, preventing one from seeing if anyone was riding toward you. A place of, quote, increased risk of a road accident, according to officers. There are loads upon loads of so-called evil spots on the road of Yakutia, places allegedly of supernatural occurrences, a gray-haired old woman with a staff chasing down cars, or a young girl trying to hitch a ride by the roadside, only to suddenly disappear from the car without any trace. Each story, as a general rule, is preceded by a chilling amount of the past events at that place. An old woman was hit by a truck here, a girl hung herself in a tree nearby there. But my road never has such stories to tell. If someone were to even notice anything supernatural there, it wouldn't take long for the whole village to trade whispers about it for the next 100 years. So I thought then that I was lucky. Having admired the red-lit view for long enough, I turned my gaze back to the road in time to spot a rider on a horse appear from behind the sharp turn. It was a bay horse, moving at trotting speed. It was not a strange sight in these parts. Live transport is popular in Yakutia, and in many respects was more convenient than cars. I kept riding my bicycle toward the rider. Now, looking back, I should have noticed a very disturbing sign. Specifically, the fact that the horse's hooves did not make any sound when hitting the road. The horse moved without a sound, but back then I didn't notice it. The animal seemed tired to me as it kept its head down. The rider was motionless and looking dead ahead. From the distance, I distinguished that he was dressed in dark clothes, but such was an unspoken custom here, and I myself was wearing a gray shirt and brown pants. As I was approaching the lone rider, I felt intuitively, without thinking, that something was not right with him, and in just a couple of moments, I realized with terrible clarity exactly what was ticking me off. Something that couldn't be there were the rider an ordinary man. His legs were terribly long, so long in fact, despite the horse's considerable height, the legs dragged down on the ground. Those legs did not end in feet either, but simply got thinner and thinner until there was nothing left. That were the legs. The second observation, which made my hair stand on end, concerned the horse itself. I could not see earlier from the front, but having approached closer, I was now looking at it from the side, and I spied another terrible violation of proportions. The horse was long, same as the legs of its rider. It only had 4 legs, if I recall correctly, but its body stretched on for many, many meters, the length of 3 normal horses, I would say. That alone would be enough to make a man faint, but I had the misfortune to not be satisfied yet, and I raised my eyes toward the face of the terrible rider. As soon as I did, my memory gets hazy. I experienced a painful fall, and a stench similar to burning rubber filled my nose. It must have simply passed me by without paying me much mind. Anyway, having regained my consciousness, I found myself lying on the road with my bicycle nearby and a burning sensation in my right shin. Nothing serious, as it later turned out, just ripped the skin a little bit, and the road was once again empty. The smell was nearly gone too. I could only smell the countryside air. The sun had only moved a little bit. I was not fainted for long. Its blood-red light nearly made me vomit. With my back covered in goosebumps, I somehow got up, and back onto the bicycle. The leisurely pace of before was out of the question. I rode as fast as I could turn the pedals, periodically checking back to see if anything was chasing me. It took me 15 minutes to reach the village, although it felt like an hour, and when I did, I let out a sigh of relief that I could hear music playing from someone's yard. I could hear the squeal of a chainsaw, the hubbub of children playing around. All this soothed my mind and helped dispel the terrible feverish memories. I simply could not keep it to myself and told my parents everything. We agreed that the being was a so-called passing spirit that was headed elsewhere. Theoretically, such a spirit could do me no harm, but it hardly made me feel any better. After that, I of course stopped taking the bicycle ride home. Even leaving the house at night for the bathroom was a challenge. Eventually, though, the bright colors began to fade, and I hope that in time I will manage to somehow suppress my fears. But one feature of the terrible rider that I'll never forget I did keep to myself. It was simply too terrible to even recall, as the mental image alone I felt would make me faint again. Even now, when I'm alone at night, were the bulging and sharp, like paper cutouts, human eyes that took up most of the horse's face. Yakuts are afraid of the dead. Well, I mean everyone is, but according to the Yakut beliefs, if a dead person, whether in a dream or in real life, appears to the living, especially to its relatives, then it's certain that the spirit is trying to pull the soul of the person that it met into the other world. There are exceptions, of course. For example, if a recently deceased relative tries to deliver a message or a request in a dream, like, "Tell my daughter that there are 9,000 rubles hidden under a certain pillow," but usually seeing dead people is a bad sign, and this story is about exactly that. Of course, I heard it from other people, but they all maintain that it happened just as I'm about to tell it. There lived once an old man in a small town. He had a fairly big house, but no relatives. So he decided to rent out a room to a girl who was doing an internship at the local hospital. They were on good terms. They didn't stand in each other's way, and they would sometimes talk about this or that in the evenings. One winter evening in particular, the girl was returning home from the hospital. Entering the yard, she heard the snow crunch somewhere on the opposite side of it. The darkness did not allow her to see who it was, and she just thought that the old man went out to do some chores. What surprised her about it, though, was that the person was wheezing or groaning loudly, something like choking on something. The girl asked out loud, "Who's there?" and the strange noises ceased entirely. Having stood there a little, the girl started feeling uncomfortable and then entered the house. She found the old man sitting by the furnace and realized that it couldn't have been him. She was quietly shitting bricks. She decided to tell him nothing, not wanting to scare the old man. During the supper, she noticed that the old man seemed rather gloomy. He explained, "When I took a nap after lunch, I dreamt of my younger brother, who passed away 2 decades ago. He kept calling me, asking me to go with him. I refused. A bad sign, that was." The girl was spooked, but opted to say nothing. The night came, and they each went to their rooms. The girl couldn't sleep, however. She just kept turning in her bed. The old man was sleeping in the next room, and she could clearly hear his uneven breaths. Suddenly, right outside the girl's window, the snow crackled again, and she could hear the fluttering, wheezing breath once more, as if someone had just finished a marathon and couldn't catch their breath. The girl hid under the blanket, overwhelmed with fear. A minute passed, and the footsteps moved over to the window of the old man's room, and on that very moment, the girl heard the man's breath change. He began to puff and wheeze too, turning in his bed. The girl thought that she should wake him up, but the guest was outside breathing loudly, almost in unison with the old man, and so she was afraid to get up from under the blanket.
She didn't know how long it lasted before she fell asleep. The first thing in the morning, after the sun rose, she went to check the snow under the windows but found no footsteps of any kind. Having let out a sigh of relief, she came back inside to have breakfast. The old man was even gloomier than before. He had seen his brother again, who this time was angry and tried to force the old man to go with him. I fought as much as I could, but in the end, he knocked me down and dragged me away by force. The old man sighed. Here, the girl at last decided to tell the old man everything she witnessed. Having heard it, the old man got depressed. You should have woke me up before he overpowered me. It was him, I'm sure. I remember how terrible his wheezing was shortly before he died of tuberculosis. Now I am gone too. And indeed, not 2 weeks had passed before the old man fell ill with severe pneumonia and did not recover. He was buried next to his brother, and the girl moved away to another place. There's a belief in what they call Casket Evening. That's what they call the evening of the day that saw someone pass away or get buried. It is believed that on such evenings, spirits from the other side come to accompany the soul of the deceased person into the next world, and therefore, the border between the visible and invisible becomes thin, very thin. Some may appear who are not invited, so it's customary not to fuss outside too much, not to have too much fun, and generally just not to draw too much attention to yourself. Otherwise, you may get some very undesirable guests that may pay you a visit. This custom, of course, means very little in big cities, where people die every day, but it is zealously observed in smaller villages, even today. Yours truly personally forbade his younger brothers to play tag outside after the death of our grandmother. This is Yakutia. Who knows what can happen? And as such, I have another story. Once in one village, a very old man, who had a boatload of relatives, died. Naturally, the entire grieving family gathered in the village to set up a proper funeral. Among them were some small children, who, as kids do, quickly managed to chum up with each other. It was summertime, therefore the new friends organized some games in the fresh evening air. And what else were they supposed to do? Sit inside a stuffy house and look at gloomy faces? Of course, this was all accompanied by shouts, laughter, and other hubbub. Someone from the old people would sometimes try and stop them. They would say, essentially, this is Casket Evening, you shouldn't fuss so much, but generally, the children were their own masters. When they became bored with tag, the children decided to play hide-and-seek in the yard. One kid, around 10, was chosen as the seeker. The children made themselves scarce, and he started looking. Some he found quickly, and then he entered the winter house, which was left empty during the summertime to be used as a warehouse. Even though those were summer nights, it was still very dark inside. The kid checked all the rooms and found nothing. On his way out, he spotted a big wardrobe. Some of his little relatives could very well be inside. He passed by it with a poker face, but sharply turned to open it, but found only winter clothes inside, jackets and coats. He suspected that someone could still be behind those. He started feeling with his hands, running a hand up the sleeve of a big coat, when suddenly the kid felt something unbelievably cold. He took a look and saw a knife shining from behind the sleeve. Surprised, his hand automatically kept going further. It turned out that the knife was being held by someone's ice-cold hand. The kid moved the coat aside and saw behind it a 2-meter-tall looking man looking down on him. The dark didn't allow him to make out his face, and a foul stench hit the kid's nose. He screamed at the top of his lungs. The kid flew out of the house and told the other children what he saw. A crowd of them went back to the house to check, only to find nothing but clothes in the wardrobe. So they just laughed at the kid, calling him a little coward, and they went back to playing their games. Another boy was to be the seeker in the following round. Business was as usual. Everyone hid, and the boy began his search. After some wandering around, he entered a barn in the far corner of the lot. As the barn windows were small, there was very little light, but the boy still distinctly saw a person hiding in the corner. "I found you," the boy said. "Come out." Standing still, he put his finger to his mouth, as it playfully suggested to keep the silence, and began laughing quietly, like he was finding the situation very funny. The boy approached him. "I said I found you. Come out." And from up close, he saw that the guy was not at all one of his friends, but was a bald, naked thing with shiny round eyes, located disproportionately high, nearly on the forehead, a chubby bulging stomach, and a tongue hanging down from its mouth all the way down its neck. The boy literally shat his pants and flew out onto the street in a moment's notice. When he came running to his parents in hysterics and told them everything, coupled with the first boy telling his story, the adults strictly forbade the children to play out on the street in the next few days. The fun and games had come to an end. The English translation of this moral may sound a little odd, but it means more to those people. To any occupation, there is a suitable time. But I found the better lesson to be that you shouldn't hang around in dark places when there's dead bodies nearby. You never know what could be there. So if you enjoyed these stories and encounters, which I hope you did, then feel free to like and subscribe. If you have encounters of your own that you would like to possibly see on the channel, I have an email in the description that you can send them to if you'd like to. Also down there are a PayPal and a Patreon link, as well as super thanks and memberships here on YouTube. But as always, just watching the video and being here with the whole community of us is very helpful to the channel too, and it keeps the videos coming. So, with that, as I said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'm going to put up a couple other videos here that you might like to explore again. Or, if it's your first time watching them, you can watch those, and I hope you'll enjoy those as well. But with that, I hope you had a good week, I hope you enjoyed the videos this week, and I hope to see you again next week. Thank you for pulling up a stump, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.